Okay, so if you've got a vehicle that you've just had the coil springs replaced and now it's pulling to the left or the right, let me tell you about my Peugeot. So this is my Peugeot 307 estate, and I had a broken coil spring, so I changed the coil springs, and the steering was always perfect on it. The steering was absolutely perfect, and I got some springs. Actually got them on eBay from a parts shop on eBay and fitted them. Now the springs I got off eBay are these ones here, and what I noticed was they were a little bit longer than the old ones by about two inches, and that probably wouldn't have been an issue because that wouldn't have been an issue really, because springs do sag. But the issue I was having was the vehicle was pulling to the left, and it was really quite annoying, and some people may or not have noticed it, but I wasn't happy with it. Now what I found was basically it was the wrong springs is the answer, and what I found was I got some springs from Euro Car Parts which are a lot better. Now the problem I had with the springs was on this spring here, the spring finished at about 5 o'clock, and the ones from Euros finished at about 6 o'clock. Now that affected the mount, how the mount sat on the top of the spring on the body of the car. So the issue I had was, you can see with these shocks now, that's how they'd be fitted on the car, and the top mounts, the position, the angle of that is regulated by the spring really, and you can see that one's going that way, so that's the camber, and that one's going the other way, which is, I now believe, will be correct. But what I found with the with the eBay springs was, and they were quite cheap springs on eBay, it was 2 springs for about 30 quid delivered. What I found was the mounts were really odd, the positioning of them. One was going up and the other one was going down. So check your if you're having the same issue, check your mounts how they're sat, because look, that's sat now pretty pretty flat at the top. That's sat pretty flat, so the angle is going down. That's the camber angle. It's the camber angle. So imagine now, I'm hoping the vehicle's not going to pull to the left. It should be perfect. I also noticed with the eBay springs, they were almost sat fat on the strut. They almost overlapped a little bit. They were sitting sort of overhanging a bit. These springs sit a lot better on the strut. They fit perfect, in fact. And these springs were actually quite a lot shorter than the ones off eBay. They were still longer than the original broken ones, because I had one broken one not broken one. I compared it to the original non-broken one, and they were slightly longer than the originals. But I would say these springs, and even looking from the top, they look a lot better how they're sat on the strut. The other ones were sat on there very peculiar. So it makes a big difference. You know, the spring, obviously these are brand new springs off eBay. I contacted the company. They said yes, they are the correct springs for the car. They're correct for the Peugeot 307 SW. They said they've had no issues, no other complaints or issues. But to be honest with you, if this had gone into a dealer and they'd fit these springs, you know, the car would have probably gone out, and you know, no one would have ever thought about it again, unless the customer was very you know, a petrol head, and they sort of thought, well, hang on a minute, you know, why is it pulling? It was pulling to the left. It was pulling to the left. It wasn't the camber of the road. If you went on the dual carriageway in the right hand lane, it was still trying to pull you to the left. Also, I noticed with those longer springs, the top strut mounts seemed a lot stiffer. These ones now are loose. They're still quite stiff. because as they are, but I can do it holding the phone, but they do turn quite freely. So I replaced the top strut mounts as well, but I did have new strut mounts when I did the original springs, so it wasn't a top strut mount issue, it's a spring issue. So if you've got a vehicle, and I've noticed online, because I was trying to find the answer because it was really winding me up, I noticed online a lot of people are saying, just have my springs replaced, the vehicle's pulling, just have my springs replaced, the vehicle's pulling, and there's no answers to it. Some people say they swap the tyres left to right and that cures it. Some people say, well, there's not a lot of answers on the threads really, but on my vehicle it was the incorrect spring, and I determined it to be, compared to the new spring, the position of where the top bit, you know, the other one was obviously longer, so it was sitting around like that, and that made a big difference to the camber angle. So make sure you've got the right springs, make sure they're exactly the same, line it up, quite difficult to do, but line it up, make sure, you know, the bottom and the top, they finish in exactly the same position as your old springs. If they start sitting around like that, or longer or shorter, it's going to affect the camber angle. So I'll only post this video online if it fixes my issue. So if you're watching this video, this has fixed my issue. If it doesn't fix it, I won't post it. So good luck, and I hope this helps some people out. Oh, cheerio. Oh, and this is my tool, by the way, 100 quid off eBay. Very good for doing the springs. I do recommend using these clamps as well, just to help you, because sometimes it's difficult if you don't. All right then, cheerio.